5 weeks ago, my mother sat across from me in a French restaurant in Greenwich, Connecticut, looked me straight in the eyes, and told me I would never have the class my older brother had. She said it softly, almost kindly, while wearing a fake pearl bracelet he had bought with money he stole from me. She had no idea that a few weeks later, I would walk into the most elegant charity gala of my brother's life, wearing a silver blue gown, carrying 10 metal flash drives filled with enough evidence to get him handcuffed in front of the entire New England elite. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 32 years old. For most of my life, my family treated me like the background character in their story. My brother Nathan was the golden son, the financial genius, the man in the Italian suits, the one who knew how to shake hands with millionaires and make my parents feel like they had raised royalty. I was the quiet daughter in the small Stamford apartment, the one who worked from a laptop, the one they said was still trying to figure things out. They did not know that 2 months before that dinner, I had sold the artificial intelligence platform I built to Veilmed Systems for $18 million. They did not know that the man Nathan was planning to impress at his gala. Billionaire CEO Adrian Vale already knew exactly who I was. And they definitely did not know that every insult, every lie, every dollar they had taken from me was about to become evidence. Before I tell you how I turned my brother's luxury gala into a public trial, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments if your family has ever made you feel invisible until they needed something from you. Because this story did not begin under chandeliers. It began at my father's 67th birthday dinner, in a restaurant where the candles were expensive, the wine list was ridiculous, and the truth finally started leaking through the cracks. The restaurant was the kind of place my mother loved because it made her feel important the second she walked through the door. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters who spoke in low voices, men in dark suits guiding people to tables as if they were entering a private club instead of a dining room. My father, Walter Hayes, sat at the head of the table in a navy blazer he only wore on special occasions. He had spent his life as a mechanical engineer, saving carefully, fixing things instead of replacing them, clipping coupons even after retirement because frugality had become part of his bones. My mother, Margaret, sat beside him in a silk blouse and a smile polished for public use. And then there was Nathan, 38 years old, perfectly groomed, wearing a charcoal Italian suit, a watch that probably cost more than my car, and the relaxed arrogance of a man who believed the room had been built for him. His wife, Celeste, sat beside him, glowing under the restaurant lighting, tilting her phone just enough to capture the wine, the candles, and the bracelet on my mother's wrist. That bracelet was Nathan's birthday gift to my father, somehow presented to my mother. He called it a rare South Sea pearl bracelet, $22,000, a token of family gratitude. My mother nearly cried when he fastened it around her wrist. She looked at him as if he had just laid a crown on her head. I watched in silence from the far end of the table, the seat I always seemed to get, close enough to be useful, far enough to be forgotten. Dinner went exactly as expected. Nathan talked about Hayes Meridian Capital, his green investment firm, and how clean energy was the future. He mentioned offshore wind projects, carbon credit portfolios, institutional capital, phrases my parents did not understand but admired because he delivered them like scripture. Celeste took photos of every course and referred to the restaurant as our little family tradition, even though I had never been invited to choose the place or the time. My mother asked Nathan about his upcoming gala at the Hawthorne Estate Club, a private coastal club where old money went to prove it was still old. Nathan smiled and said some very serious people would be there. Politicians, investors, philanthropists, maybe even Adrian Vale. My mother touched his sleeve, like he had just announced he was meeting the president. Then the check came. The waiter placed it beside my father with the practiced discretion of someone who had seen rich people panic quietly. My father slipped his card into the leather folder. The waiter disappeared. Conversation continued. Celeste adjusted the bracelet for another photo. Nathan checked his phone. My mother told him again how proud she was. Then, the waiter returned, with the leather folder still in his hand. He bent toward my father and said, very softly, "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes." The card was declined. "Do you have another form of payment?" Silence dropped over the table. My father blinked, confused, as if the word declined belonged to another language. He reached for his wallet, patted his pockets, checked the same card again. My mother stiffened. Celeste stopped filming. Nathan did not reach for his wallet. He leaned back, smiled with one corner of his mouth, and looked directly at me. "Maybe Eleanor can cover it," he said. "She doesn't have a family or any real responsibilities. It might be good for her to contribute for once." The bill was $1,800. Not impossible for me, not even uncomfortable, but that was never the point. The point was placement. Nathan wanted me back in my assigned role, the useful one, the quiet one, the one who paid and then apologized for existing. My mother gave a soft, embarrassed laugh. Then she placed her hand over Nathan's and looked at me with that familiar expression, pity, dressed as affection. "Don't take it personally, sweetheart," she said. "Not everyone is born with Nathan's class. You will never move in his world, and that is okay. We love you anyway." There it was. The blade slid in with a smile. I looked down at the table, not because I was ashamed, but because something had caught my eye. The pearl bracelet on my mother's wrist had shifted under the candlelight. Near the clasp, the silver coating had rubbed thin. Beneath it, cheap metal showed through, leaving a faint grey-green stain against her skin. I stared at it for 3 seconds. 4, 5. A $22,000 bracelet did not turn skin green. A man who could casually buy South Sea pearls did not sit motionless, while his retired father's card was declined. A man with real wealth did not need his little sister to pay for dinner. In that moment, the illusion cracked. Not shattered. Not yet. Just cracked enough for me to see the darkness behind it. I placed my napkin on the table. "I'm not paying for dinner," I said. My mother's smile froze. Celeste looked up from her phone. Nathan's eyes narrowed. My father whispered my name like a warning. I looked straight at Nathan. "And, starting next month, I'm not transferring $2,750 into the Hayes Family Stability Fund anymore." The table went completely still. My father's confusion was immediate and genuine. "What fund?" he asked. My mother looked from me to Nathan. "Eleanor, what are you talking about?" I opened my banking app and placed the phone in the center of the table. "The fund Nathan told me you needed. The one he said was helping with your retirement after the market downturn. $2,750 a month for 5.5 years. I tapped the total. $181,500. My father's face drained. My mother pulled her hand back from Nathan's arm. Celeste stopped breathing. For one beautiful second, Nathan looked scared. Then he recovered. He leaned forward, sighed, and put on the patient voice he used when explaining fake complexity to people he considered beneath him. "Eleanor, you don't understand structured family wealth management," he said. "That account is part of a tax-protected internal bridge vehicle. The money is not missing. It is being positioned." He said it with such confidence that my parents almost relaxed before he finished the sentence. That was his gift. Nathan could pour nonsense into a crystal glass and make people call it champagne. I said, "Then show us the account." He smiled. "This is not the place," I said. "It became the place when you tried to make me pay for dinner." My mother's face hardened. Not at Nathan, at me. "Why do you always do this?" she asked. "Why can't we have one nice family evening without your jealousy?" My father looked away, ashamed not of Nathan, but of the scene I was making. That was when I understood the most painful truth of the night. They did not want evidence. They wanted comfort. They wanted Nathan's version, because Nathan's version allowed them to keep believing they had produced a prince. Mine forced them to consider that their prince might be a thief. I picked up my phone, stood, and said, "Happy birthday, Dad." Then I walked out, leaving them with the bill, the fake pearls, and the lie they loved more than me. In the parking lot, the cold air hit my face, and for a moment, my hands shook so hard I could barely unlock my car. But I did not cry for long. I had spent years writing systems that found patterns people tried to hide. Fraud, delay, bottlenecks, false reporting. My software had been built to see what humans missed. So I opened my laptop right there in the driver's seat, tethered it to my phone, and searched the Connecticut Business Registry for Hayes Family Stability Fund. It took less than 90 seconds. The fund was not a family trust. It was not a retirement vehicle. It was not connected to my parents at all. It was a single-member LLC registered to Nathaniel Hayes, using a virtual office address in Manhattan. My money had not been supporting my parents. My money had been supporting Nathan's performance. The rented Greenwich house, the sports car, Celeste's designer clothes, the club memberships, the dinners where he courted investors. 5.5 years of my loyalty had been converted into stage lighting for his fake empire. The next morning, Nathan called me. I let it ring twice, then answered with my recording app already running. He did not bother with charm. "You embarrassed this family," he snapped. "You humiliated Mum on Dad's birthday." "I exposed a fund you lied about," I said. "Careful," he replied. His voice dropped. "You forget who helped you get that apartment in Stamford." 6 years earlier, when my credit history was thin, Nathan had signed as guarantor on my lease. He had complained the entire time, reminding me that I would never survive without him. Apparently, he had kept that little piece of leverage polished and ready. "If you keep digging," he said, "I'll call the management company and withdraw support. You'll be out in 3 weeks. Good luck finding another place with that on your record." I asked, slowly, clearly. "Are you threatening to make your own sister homeless to cover up the money you took through a fake family fund?" He laughed. "I'm reminding you of your position." I saved the audio in 3 places after the call ended. Nathan thought he had frightened me. What he had actually done was hand me Exhibit 1. 3 days later, a notice appeared on my apartment door. 21 days to vacate. He had done exactly what he promised, and I will admit, standing in that narrow hallway, looking at the paper taped to my door, I felt the old version of myself rise up for 1 second. The version trained to apologize, to call my mother, to beg Nathan to reconsider, to make myself smaller so everyone else could stay comfortable. Then I folded the notice, put it in the trash, and ordered moving boxes. Nathan did not know the Stamford apartment had never been proof of my failure. It had been my workshop. While he was leasing cars and buying fake jewelry, I was building an AI platform that optimized cold chain logistics for medical supplies, vaccines, transplant materials, temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals. My system reduced waste, predicted delays, and saved companies millions. 2 months before that dinner, Vailmed Systems had acquired my company for $18 million. I had not told my family because I already knew what they valued. They did not respect quiet work. They respected noise. They respected labels. They respected performance. So, I decided to give Nathan the performance he expected. I created a fake startup plan called Fresh Loop Courier. It was intentionally terrible. Organic fruit delivery by electric bicycle. NFT-based grocery coupons. A desperate request for $12,000 to keep the servers running. I printed it, bent the corners, and left it on my kitchen counter during the final inspection. Nathan arrived in a camel coat and expensive loafers, stepping through my half-empty apartment like a landlord inspecting damage. "You brought this on yourself," he said, glancing at the boxes. "All you had to do was stay in your lane." Then he saw the business plan. His face brightened with cruelty. He picked it up, read 2 lines, and laughed. "Fresh Loop Courier? This is what you ruined the family over? A fruit delivery app?" He took a photo and sent it to Celeste. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. Celeste had texted, "Tell her the staff entrance at the Gala is still open." Nathan tossed the papers back on the counter. "You always wanted to play founder," he said. "This is pathetic." I lowered my eyes just enough to let him believe he had won. By noon, I handed over the keys. By evening, my things were on their way to Newport, Rhode Island, where I had purchased a waterfront penthouse for $3.1 million in cash. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, a terrace overlooking the marina. No guarantor, no family address, no one holding a key over my head. I stood in the empty living room, listening to the distant sound of sailboat rigging against metal masts, and felt something I had not felt in years. Silence without fear. Then Vivian Cross called. Vivian was the investor who had seen my work before anyone else did. A self-made billionaire with silver hair, sharp eyes, and no patience for fools. She had guided my acquisition, negotiated the terms, and introduced me to Adrian Vale himself. She did not waste time with greetings. "Eleanor," she said. "My forensic team looked into Hayes Meridian Capital. Your brother is not just stealing from you. It is much worse." She told me to pull the property records for my parents' house in Greenwich. I did. 11 months earlier, a $1.4 million loan had been taken against the property. My father's name was on the deed of trust, but the signature was wrong. The angle was wrong. The pressure was wrong. My father had signed birthday cards the same way for 30 years. That was not his signature. My first thought was that Nathan had forged it. I printed the documents and drove to my parents' house because some foolish part of me still believed they were victims. My mother opened the door wearing the fake pearl bracelet. The green stain beneath it had darkened. "You owe this family an apology," she said, before I even stepped inside. I placed the deed on the coffee table. Nathan took a $1.4 million loan against this house. Dad didn't sign this. My mother did not gasp. She did not look confused. Her face hardened. You went digging through private records? She asked. Mom, I said, pointing to the signature. This is fraud. She crossed her arms. I signed it. The words landed without drama, which made them worse. I stared at her. You signed Dad's name? Nathan needed a bridge loan, she said. Your father is too conservative. He would have panicked and ruined an opportunity he did not understand. I felt something inside me go very still. You committed fraud to help Nathan borrow against the only home you and Dad own. Do not use ugly words because you are jealous, she snapped. Nathan is building something important. You sit in a little apartment playing with data and resent him because he has vision. I told her Nathan's company was $9.2 million in the red. I told her there were no clean energy assets, no real projects, no legitimate returns. She would not listen. She tore the papers in half and told me I was no longer welcome for Thanksgiving. That was the moment my last daughterly illusion died. My mother was not trapped in Nathan's lie. She was holding the door open for it. I left without arguing. There is no point trying to rescue someone who calls the fire a warm family tradition. That night, Vivian sent the complete report. Hayes Meridian Capital was a shell dressed in green language. Nathan had raised money for solar funds that did not exist, wind projects that never broke ground, carbon credit portfolios that were nothing but spreadsheet theater. New investor money paid old investor returns. My monthly transfers had paid for Access Club dues, client dinners, luxury events. My parents' home equity had been thrown into the same furnace, and the gala at the Hawthorne Estate Club was not philanthropy. It was a hunting ground. Nathan needed a massive new investment to plug a $9.2 million hole before the entire scheme collapsed. His target was Adrian Vale. The same Adrian Vale who had sat across from me in a glass conference room, reviewed my work, and authorized the acquisition that made me wealthier than Nathan could pretend to be. I laughed once when I saw the name, not because anything was funny, because justice, when it finally arrives, sometimes has exquisite taste. The night before the gala, my father called. His voice sounded old in a way I had never heard before. Eleanor, he said, Nathan has a temporary liquidity issue. Just temporary. He needs $75,000 by tomorrow. Or the Gala vendors won't clear and everything could fall apart. In the background, my mother was crying loudly enough for me to hear. Not the cry of guilt, the cry of someone trying to direct a scene. Nathan was too proud to ask me himself, so he had sent them. I let my voice tremble. Dad, that is everything I have. He'll pay it back Monday, my father said quickly. With interest, please. This is family. Family. The word people use when they want access without accountability. I agreed, but said I needed Nathan to sign a formal note in person. My father sounded relieved enough to make me sick. The next morning, I dressed like the version of myself Nathan believed in. Old sweater, faded jeans, cheap shoes, no makeup. I pinned a tiny camera into the center of my cardigan, wired to a recorder beneath my clothes, and picked up a cashier's check for $75,000 from my private bank. Then I drove into Manhattan to Nathan's office on the 41st floor of a glass tower in Midtown. Hayes Meridian Capital looked impressive if you did not know what rot smelled like. Frosted glass. Marble reception desk. Photographs of Nathan shaking hands with men who probably had no idea They were props in his fraud. He kept me waiting 10 minutes, then waved me into his corner office without thanks. His tie was loose. His eyes were shadowed. He looked like a gambler who had not slept. "Do you have it?" he asked. I held the check in my purse. "I'm scared, Nathan." The bank said I should understand what I'm lending against. He rolled his eyes and printed a 1-page promissory note full of empty legal language. I angled my cardigan toward the desk. "What about Mum and Dad's house?" I asked quietly. "The deed shows Dad's signature." Nathan laughed. "Dad didn't sign anything. Margaret handled it. The notary is an old fraternity friend. Nobody was going to make a federal case over timing." My heartbeat stayed steady. He kept going because arrogance loves an audience. "The family fund is just a DBA attached to my operating ledger. I needed liquidity for networking expenses, client acquisition, memberships. You think serious investors appear out of nowhere? Your little monthly transfer bought access." I whispered. "And Adrian Vale?" Nathan smiled with hunger. "Vale is the key. One initial allocation from him tonight, and everything stabilizes." There it was. Motive, fraud, forgery, intent. All in his own voice. I slid the cashier's check across the desk. His relief was immediate. He snatched it, stood, and opened the door. "Do not come tonight," he said. "Celeste was trying to be kind with that serving job, but honestly, your presence would distract from the tone of the event." I walked out, rode the elevator down, and called my banker from the lobby. "Stop payment," I said. He paused. "Mr. Hayes just deposited it through mobile capture. If we reverse it during settlement, his overdrawn commercial account will trigger fraud protocols. Connected credit lines may freeze." "When?" I asked. 8:30 tonight, I smiled. "Perfect." "At my penthouse." Celeste texted me. "Staff entrance. 5 p.m. Black dress. No jewelry. Do not speak to guests." I did not answer. I called a styling team. By 7:15 that evening, the woman in the mirror no longer resembled the sister Nathan had threatened, the daughter my mother had dismissed, or the tenant he had tried to evict. My hair was swept into a sleek knot. My makeup was clean, sharp, deliberate. The gown was silver blue silk, cut simply but perfectly, the exact shade used in Veiled Systems branding. It was not a fashion choice. It was a message. I copied the evidence onto 10 metal flash drives engraved with one word: evidence. Then I placed them inside a small clutch and stepped into the black Rolls-Royce Vivian had sent. The Hawthorne Estate Club glittered against the dark coastline, like something built to hide bad behavior behind good lighting. Luxury cars rolled toward the valet. Photographers flashed their cameras. Waiters moved with champagne. Celeste stood near the entrance in a gold dress, smiling too widely, scanning the arrivals for Adrian Vale. Nathan hovered beside her in a tuxedo, sweat shining at his hairline. He was running out of time and did not know the clock had already been set against him. Adrian arrived first. Celeste nearly ran to greet him. Nathan shook his hand with both hands, laughing too loudly, talking about sustainability, legacy, and exclusive opportunities. Then my car pulled up. The driver opened the door. I stepped onto the red carpet, silver blue silk falling around me like water. Cameras turned. Celeste saw the dress first, then my face. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the stone. Nathan followed her stare. For a second, he looked as if the world had glitched. I walked toward the entrance. He snapped at security. "Remove her. She is not a guest." Then he turned toward Adrian, forcing a smile. "I apologize. This is my sister. She's had some instability, financial issues. We try to help her, but she creates scenes." A guard stepped toward me. Adrian's voice cut through the air. "Do not touch her." The guard froze. Adrian walked past Nathan as if he were furniture and took both my hands. "Eleanor," he said warmly, "there you are." I was beginning to wonder if my guest of honor had decided to make an entrance. He turned to Nathan. "Your sister is the founder of the AI logistics platform Veiled acquired. One of the sharpest minds I have ever worked with." The cameras flashed again. Nathan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Celeste looked at me as if she had just realized the servant she invited to pour wine owned the vineyard. Adrian offered his arm. I took it. Together. We walked inside. The ballroom was all chandeliers, white flowers, silk tablecloths, and expensive lies. Nathan recovered enough to begin his program at 8:05. He stood at the podium under warm lights and spoke about trust, about family, about building a better future, about protecting the next generation. He gestured toward my parents at the head table and said they were his inspiration. My father smiled weakly. My mother sat stiff as stone. I looked at the clock. 25 minutes. Then Nathan began the charity auction with a mediocre coastal painting. Bids rose from 1,000 to 3, then 5. His smile strained. He needed millions, not polite applause. I lifted my paddle. $75,000, I said. The room went silent. Nathan froze. He knew that number. He knew I knew. I placed the paddle down, stood, and walked toward the stage with my clutch in hand. Nathan stepped away from the podium, whispering, "Eleanor, don't!" I took the microphone. "Nathan just spoke beautifully about trust," I said. "About family. About protecting the future. But trust cannot be built on forged documents. Family cannot be protected with stolen money, and charity should never be used as a stage to hunt new victims." The screens behind me flickered. Vivian had made sure the venue system was accessible. The Gala logo disappeared. In its place came the truth. Hayes Meridian Capital, -$9.2 million. Hayes Family Stability Fund, owned solely by Nathaniel Hayes. 5.5 years of my transfers, $2,750 every month. The $1.4 million loan against my parents' house. Investor payouts funded by newer investor deposits. Then the audio played. Nathan's voice filled the ballroom. "Dad didn't sign anything. Margaret handled it. The notary is an old fraternity friend. Then the family fund is just a DBA attached to my operating ledger. Then your little monthly transfer bought access. Then Veil is the key. One initial allocation from him tonight, and everything stabilizes." No one moved. My father stared at the screen as if it had reached into his chest and pulled something out. My mother's face collapsed, not from innocence, but from exposure. Celeste covered her mouth. Nathan shouted, "It's fake. It's a deep fake. She's jealous. She has always been jealous." But the room had already turned. Wealthy people do not panic like ordinary people. They mobilize. Phones came out. Lawyers were called. Transfers were frozen. Advisors were summoned. Then, at exactly 8:30, Nathan's phone began buzzing over and over. His commercial accounts had been frozen, his credit lines cut, the $75,000 deposit reversed. Fraud protocols triggered. The last plank under his fake empire snapped in real time. He looked at me then, really looked, and understood that he had not been fighting a desperate little sister. He had been walking through a maze I built while he laughed at the walls. The ballroom doors opened. Financial crimes investigators entered, with uniformed officers behind them. Vivian had sent the dossier before the gala began. They had waited until Nathan gathered his targets in one room and continued the fraud in public. Nathaniel Hayes. The lead investigator said, "You are under arrest for bank fraud, wire fraud, investment fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of family assets." The handcuffs clicked around his wrists beneath the chandeliers. The golden sun, the genius, the man my mother worshipped, was led off the stage in a wrinkled tuxedo past the very investors he had tried to deceive. Celeste screamed at him that he had ruined her life. I opened my clutch, took out a $5 bill, and placed it on an empty champagne tray in front of her. "You said I could keep the tips," I told her, "but I think you'll need this more." My father stood slowly. He looked at the mortgage document still glowing on the screen, then at my mother. In that look was the end of 40 years. He did not yell. He simply removed his bow tie, turned away, and walked out. My mother ran after me near the entrance. "Eleanor, please," she cried. I was manipulated. "You are all I have left." Her hand grabbed my sleeve. I looked down at her fingers on the silk. Once, that touch would have undone me. Once, I would have saved her just to feel chosen for 5 minutes. Not anymore. I gently removed her hand. "I tried to save you when I thought you were a victim," I said. "But you chose to become an accomplice." Then I walked out through the front doors. Not the service entrance. Not the side hallway. The front doors. 9 months later, Nathan accepted a plea deal and received 72 months in federal prison. The man who lectured people about green investments now attends basic financial literacy sessions in a prison classroom. Celeste lost the rented house, the car, the designer clothes, and the followers who only admired the lifestyle she never owned. She works events now at a hotel in Providence, pouring champagne for people she once tried to impress. My father moved to a small apartment in Norwalk. He refuses my money, not because he hates me, but because shame is a heavy thing for proud men. My mother nearly lost the Greenwich house. I paid off the $1.4 million loan before foreclosure. But I transferred the title into a trust I control. She is allowed to live there, not because I forgave her, because I refused to become cruel, just because cruelty raised me. She sends letters. I do not answer. I live in Newport now, overlooking the harbor, consulting for Veilmed Systems, working with Adrian. As an equal, some evenings, I stand on my terrace with coffee in my hand and listen to the wind moving through the marina. The quiet feels different now. It is not loneliness. It is peace. For years, my family called me selfish whenever I stopped being useful. They called my boundaries disrespect. They called my silence weakness. They called my success impossible because it did not arrive wearing Nathan's suit. But here is what I learned. You do not owe your light to people who only value you in the dark. You do not have to keep setting yourself on fire to warm a family that complains about the smoke. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destruction. It is illumination. I did not destroy my family. I turned on the lights. And when the lights came on, everything rotten collapsed. On its own.